The CDC published a nutrient density index in 2014 that ranked fruits and vegetables by bioavailable vitamins, minerals, and phytonutrients per calorie. One plant scored a perfect 100 out of 100. Not kale, not spinach, not blueberries. Watercress. A plant modern agriculture classified as a weed. A plant grocery stores place in the herbs section, sold by the decorative bunch for $4, used as garnish, discarded after plating. The most nutrient-dense food on earth, confirmed by federal health agencies, reclassified as a luxury salad accent. This was not an accident. This was economic redesign. Watercress grows in flowing fresh water. It requires no soil amendment, no fertilizer, no pesticides. It doubles its biomass every 14 days under correct conditions. It contains more calcium than milk, more iron than spinach, more vitamin C than oranges, and more folate than supplements. All in bioavailable forms the human body absorbs without processing. But it spoils within 48 hours of harvest. It cannot survive industrial refrigeration systems. It cannot be stored in distribution centers. It cannot be genetically modified to extend shelf life without destroying the glucosinolate compounds that make it valuable. So the supply chain reclassified it. Not as food, as decoration. Ancient Persia documented watercress as standard rations for soldiers, not as medicine, as fuel. Persian military texts from the Achaemenid Empire describe watercress cultivation in Qanat irrigation systems specifically for troop provisioning. Soldiers consumed it daily, not because commanders valued nutrition abstractly, but because armies that ate watercress maintained strength on longer campaigns. Greek physicians recorded this. Hippocrates built his first hospital on the island of Kos, next to a watercress stream. Not for symbolism, for access. Greek military training manuals required watercress consumption before combat. Roman agricultural writers, Columella and Pliny, documented watercress cultivation techniques in imperial aqueduct systems, listing it as a staple crop, not a medicinal herb. The Romans engineered flowing water infrastructure specifically to grow it at scale. They did not call it a superfood. They called it food. Medieval monasteries maintained watercress beds as standard agricultural practice. Monastic records from Benedictine and Cistercian orders across Europe detail watercress harvest cycles, preservation methods, and distribution during winter months. They did not grow it for flavor. They grew it because populations that consumed watercress during sieges and famines avoided scurvy, avoided anemia, avoided the cognitive decline that came with malnutrition. When the monastery at Cluny documented food stores in 1142, watercress appeared in the same logistical category as grain and preserved fish. Essential, not optional. Traditional Chinese medical texts classified watercress as a cooling herb for inflammation and respiratory illness, prescribing it not as supplementary treatment, but as primary intervention. The logic was not mystical. It was observational. People who ate watercress recovered faster. The technology of watercress is the technology of decentralization. It requires no supply chain, no transportation network, no industrial processing. A household with access to flowing water, even a small stream or constructed channel, can cultivate indefinitely. Harvest is continuous. A mature bed produces edible biomass daily. There is no planting season, no fallow period. The plant regenerates from cuttings, meaning a single bunch purchased once can populate an entire system. Roman engineering manuals described watercress propagation as simpler than wheat cultivation. Medieval European peasants maintained watercress patches in irrigation ditches as insurance against crop failure. The plant does not deplete soil. It does not require rotation. It does not depend on external inputs. It is a closed loop. Watercress contains benzyl isothiocyanate, phenethyl isothiocyanate, and gluconasturtium, glucosinolate compounds that convert to bioactive molecules during digestion. These compounds activate phase 2 detoxification enzymes in the liver, enhance DNA repair mechanisms, and inhibit angiogenesis in abnormal cell growth. The vitamin K content regulates calcium deposition, preventing arterial calcification while strengthening bone matrix. The nitrate levels improve endothelial function and blood pressure regulation without pharmaceutical intervention. The iron is bound to vitamin C in the same plant tissue, ensuring absorption rates that exceed supplementation. This is not nutritional theory. This is biochemical structure. During the siege of Paris in 885, Frankish forces survived 9 months of Viking encirclement. Historical records attribute survival to stored grain, but Carolingian agricultural texts document extensive watercress cultivation along the Seine's inner tributaries, within the city walls. The population had access to flowing water. They had watercress systems. Viking forces, camped outside the city, did not. Frankish records describe disease in the Viking camp: scurvy, anemia, cognitive impairment. The siege broke not because the Franks had more soldiers, but because the Vikings could not maintain functional troops. The difference was not morale, it was nutrition. One side had access to year-round vitamin C, bioavailable iron, and folate. The other did not. The Irish famines of the 18th and 19th centuries killed over 1 million people. Potato blight destroyed the primary calorie source, but coastal communities with access to watercress beds, particularly in Munster and Connaught, showed statistically lower mortality rates. British colonial reports noted this without explanation, attributing it to geographic luck or moral character. They did not investigate the watercress. They did not ask why populations near flowing water survived, while inland populations collapsed. The data existed. The conclusion was avoided. Recognizing watercress as famine prevention technology would have required recognizing that the monoculture cash crop system, which Britain enforced, was not inevitable. It was a choice. Watercress requires 1,400 liters of water to produce 1 kilogram of edible biomass. Beef requires 15,000 liters per kilogram. Almonds require 16,000. Watercress grows in water that continues flowing. It does not consume water. It filters it. The plant removes nitrates, heavy metals, and pharmaceutical residues from contaminated streams, leaving cleaner water downstream. It is not extraction. It is remediation. 1 hectare of watercress, grown in a recirculating aquaponic system, produces 45,000 kilograms of food annually. 1 hectare of wheat produces 3,000 kilograms. The yield is 15 times higher. The input is lower. But wheat can be stored for years. Watercress cannot. The supply chain is not designed for freshness. It is designed for durability. The global vegetable market prioritizes shelf stability. Tomatoes are harvested green and gassed with ethylene to simulate ripening during transport. Lettuce is vacuum sealed and refrigerated to delay decomposition. Carrots are waxed to prevent moisture loss. These interventions extend market reach but reduce nutrient content. Watercress cannot be modified this way. The glucosinolates that make it valuable degrade rapidly after harvest. Refrigeration accelerates this degradation. The plant must be consumed fresh. This is incompatible with centralized distribution. Watercress requires local production, decentralized systems, household cultivation, the opposite of industrial agriculture. Government subsidies in the United States allocate $17 billion annually to corn, soy, wheat, and rice. Watercress receives zero. Nutritional guidelines recommend dark leafy greens, but agricultural policy does not fund their production. The incentive structure rewards volume, shelf life, and processing compatibility. Watercress fails every criterion. It cannot be turned into packaged goods. It cannot be stored in warehouses. It cannot be shipped internationally, so it disappeared from agricultural priorities, not because it lacks value, because its value cannot be concentrated and controlled. Language reclassifies systems. Watercress is called a weed in water management contexts, targeted for removal from irrigation canals because it obstructs flow. The same plant in the same location, performing the same function, is called a crop only when someone profits from harvest. The biology does not change. The classification does. This linguistic shift removes watercress from public waterways, criminalizing harvest, restricting access, and ensuring that the most nutrient-dense plant on Earth remains inaccessible to the populations who need it most. The reclassification is not scientific, it is economic. The same pattern appears across the historical record. Amaranth, classified as a weed in the American Midwest, was the primary grain of the Aztec Empire, producing more protein per hectare than wheat with zero irrigation. Moringa, dismissed as a decorative tree in tropical landscapes, contains 9 essential amino acids, more iron than beef, and more calcium than milk, all in a drought-resistant perennial. Purslane, poisoned in suburban lawns across North America, contains more omega-3 fatty acids than any other land plant, more beta-carotene than carrots, and thrives in degraded soil without fertilizer. Each was reclassified from food to weed, not because the nutrition disappeared, but because the supply chain could not monetize it. Climate projections show increasing freshwater scarcity, soil degradation, and crop failures in grain-producing regions by 2040. The food systems that reclassified watercress as a weed depend on stable rainfall, petroleum-based fertilizers, and predictable temperatures. Those conditions are disappearing. Watercress does not. It grows in marginal water sources, polluted streams, and constructed wetlands. It requires no amendments. It tolerates temperature fluctuation. It is not a solution to climate collapse. It is a plant that will remain productive when the systems that replaced it fail. The return is not ideological. It is inevitable. The corporations that control seed patents, fertilizer production, and distribution networks do not benefit from watercress cultivation. There is no genetic modification to patent, no proprietary input to sell, no processing margin to capture. The plant propagates freely. It grows without purchased inputs. It cannot be controlled, so it was removed from the system, not through bans, through reclassification, through economic deprioritization, through the quiet removal from nutritional education, agricultural extension programs, and subsidized crop lists. The erasure was structural. Every supply chain is a political decision about who eats and what they access. Watercress was not forgotten. It was strategically excluded. The knowledge remains, the plant remains. The infrastructure that once prioritized it was dismantled, not because it failed, but because it succeeded without creating profit centers. History does not repeat by accident. It repeats because the same incentives produce the same outcomes. The question is not whether watercress will return to food systems. The question is whether it will return by choice or by necessity. If this vault revealed something they tried to bury beneath classifications, subscribe to preserve what the system sought to erase. Knowledge only endures when it is actively remembered. The next vault opens soon.